Hi there. I know this may seem a bit odd. I've got my usual backdrop behind me of my books, but I'm wearing a heavy metal t-shirt for the band Stryper, and so that seems a little bit odd for this channel. This is a channel based on education and things having to do with learning and teaching and so forth. And what is Steve doing wearing a heavy metal shirt, and what is this video really all about? So I've got an album out, a musical album, and I want to share it with you, and I want to talk about three facets of it. First of all, why would I be promoting or sharing a music album on an education channel? If you think about it, education, teaching, really is just a particular form of communication. And isn't that what music really is? Music is communication, whether it's instrumental or vocal. We are communicating with each other. We're communicating ideas. We're communicating feelings. So much through the rhythm and the sound of music. And so I would argue that music, songs, right along with the words of an essay or a blog or a podcast, fit with the whole concept of education. And so that's why I am sharing this on my primary education channel. Now, the second thing I want to address is something that I really don't like: AI. I'm not a fan. I'm really not a fan. And yet I used AI, artificial intelligence, to help create this album. And you say, why would you do that, Steve? You've said things about AI, and I've written about it. I've talked about it in videos. I really think that AI can be useful when it is not taking the place of human creativity. I think it was just about crunching numbers and crunching data, or maybe producing something, quite frankly, that's not that terribly important. Okay, maybe, but not in place of human creativity. And yet, I wrote an album of songs and used Suno AI to create the music. You say, Steve, that really seems contradictory to what you've been saying, and it is. Let's be honest, it is contradictory. But the reason I did it is this. There's a singer-songwriter novelist named Andrew Peterson. My wife gave me his book called Adorning the Dark. And in it, he talks about the need to share our poetry and our songs with friends and loved ones. And even if it's not really great stuff, he said, we've got this creative spirit within us. So even if it's not the best poem, even if it's not the best song, go ahead and write it, share it with friends and family. Maybe it's what they need to hear in a particular moment of their lives. And he said it would be better to go ahead and share something that is not perfect than not to share it at all if it's going to touch somebody's heart, touch somebody's life. Well, I have to say, I would love for these songs to be recorded properly. I would love to be involved in that probably at some point. And who knows, maybe that will happen. But right now, I am not in the music world. I'm not connected with the kind of musicians that would be required for an album like this. We're going to talk about that style here in just a moment. I'm not connected in that world. So for these songs ever to see the light of day, I used AI. And I was introduced to the idea of AI with music through one of my students, and then I discovered Suno. It's why I am not putting this album out for pay. This album, which is going to be linked in this video, is simply on my YouTube channel. You're welcome to listen to it for free to your heart's content. In fact, if you want to put it on your own phone or computer or upload it to your personal Spotify files, I'll send you the MP3s for free, because I did not write or perform the music. It's done by Suno AI. So having said that, there's the disclaimer. I don't necessarily care for that part, but I did want to get these songs out. And what are these songs? Well, the third part of this video, the last part I want to talk about, is heavy metal music and the Christian faith. For those who know me, you know that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And you also know that I love hard rock and heavy metal music. Everything from the classic stuff of Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin on through the 80s with, White Snake and Def Leppard and those guys. And I love Christian heavy metal music. And some of you may say, well, that's a contradiction in terms. For many years, or for several years, I co-hosted a Christian hard rock and heavy metal podcast called The Wild Man and Steve Show. You can still find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And my co-host and I, Pastor Wildman, we talked often and with our guests about the fact that hard rock and heavy metal music is such a great vehicle for proclaiming the truths of the Christian faith. What Christ did on the cross is bold. His resurrection, his offer of forgiveness and salvation and grace and all that is a powerful, powerful message. And it comes through so well in heavy metal. Heavy metal doesn't have to be about lyrically bad stuff. And so there have been many, many, many hard rock and Christian metal outfits. And then all of the subgenres of metal that have developed. From death metal and doom metal and symphonic metal and hair metal and just on and on and on. That has just continued to divide into various genres, and all of those have their Christian artists as well. So the album I wrote is called Twilight of the Gods, and it is mostly in the doom metal style. And you go say, "Oh, doom, that sounds really, really bad." Doom metal really has the feel of something kind of heavy. It can be a little bit dark, but then some of the themes of these songs are dark, and you say, well, what does that have to do with the Christian faith? My friends, it's not easy to follow Christ. It really isn't. And in fact, one of the songs deals with depression and how one goes about the day trying to face yet another day as a Christian, but one suffering from depression. There's a song that talks about evangelism and why we do or do not want to share Christ with certain people. There's a song that talks about the scriptures. And one of the things about heavy metal very often gets into historical themes. And this one song called Sacred Scrolls touches on some of the historical aspects of the translation of the Bible from Hebrew into Greek with the Old Testament, from the Hebrew and Greek of the Old and New Testaments into Latin with St. Jerome. There's the opening track, which is the title track of the album, Twilight of the Gods, which deals with Norse and Greek and Roman mythology and how the Norse concept of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the end of all the gods, wasn't what one would think when it comes to the mythology, but actually has something to do with Jesus Christ. There's songs of hope. I think hopefully all the songs are encouraging. They are certainly bold. Hopefully would be the kinds of songs that would encourage you, strengthen you in your faith, or maybe you don't care for this kind of music at all, but you know somebody who would. You know somebody who would relate to the heavy metal music, but says, I'm not sure about that Christian stuff. Share this album with them. Maybe it will teach them something.